You see on the left-hand side, it is the team of Drake Sasser, Harlan Freer, and Zach Allen. We're going to be starting with the standard match. And over in the standard seat, it is Zach Allen playing Sultai Golos. They're taking on the team of Tomajko, number 2, and Abe Corrigan. You may be familiar with Oliver Tomajko, of course, already invited to our Players' Championship. Brought his little brother this week, Gabe Tomajko, playing Burn in the modern seat. Good stuff. Love seeing that family love. We are going to start with standard, as I mentioned. And it's a Golos mirror. Get used to those. Going to be a lot of them. Zach Allen playing Sultai Golos. A little bit of a new look. I think Bant Golos is probably the default mode of this deck. Zach's picking up Sultai.
Looks like that's a lot of Field of the Dead, I think.
Yeah, we've got our first free spell of the day, Craig. It's Once Upon a Time at no cost for Abe Corrigan. Abe going to use that to go find a Boros Guildgate. Just smooth out the mana a little bit. Free cantrips, totally fine. One of the interesting things about these Golos decks is how far they go in accounting for the mirror. Zach Allen has 2 Yarok the Desecrated as well as 2 Agent of Treachery.
So it's kind of wild to me. This speaks to how big the format is, right? Just decks trying to go over the top of each other. Because these are cards that are so clunky when they're not doing unfair things, right? Like, it's just, to me, they're cards that should not be good enough. But the format's slow enough, things are big enough where you want these just insane effects, and you can put, I don't, these cards just, it's frustrating to me. I don't think they should be good enough.
Well, we'll see if they are, Craig. We're presently playing the tournament, so we can't, like I said, we can't crown them yet. There you see Yarok the Desecrated, found by Once Upon a Time for free. Have it both on the battlefield and on our screen now. Death Touch lifelink. If a permanent entering the battlefield causes a triggered ability of a permanent you control to trigger, that ability triggers an additional time. So, you get additional Field of the Dead tokens. You get additional Agent of Treachery.
Yep, that's a big one.
Activations when it enters the battlefield. No bonus for Hydroid Crisis. Of course, that's a cast trigger.
Yep.
Golos, though.
Golos, 2 cards.
Go get 2 lands.
Yep.
Yarok seems pretty powerful here. Like you said, I think it's very much going over the top, a huge, huge effect. But there's a lot of room for huge effects in this present standard.
Yeah, the Sultai deck leans a little more heavily on Risen Reef instead of a lot of the other ramp spells that you traditionally see.
Yep, 4 copies of Risen Reef in the deck.
But again, it's another card that is going to get double triggers with Yarok, and Yarok is an elemental, double triggering itself off the Risen Reef ability when it comes down afterwards.
Absolutely. Both players just in the setup phase right now. You see Zach Allen cast Growth Spiral, put an additional land into play, use that to power out a 2 power and toughness Hydroid Crisis and draw a card. But Abe making the first real big move on his side at 5 lands, plays a circuitous route, already has Field of the Dead on the battlefield, and that means 2 zombies going to be joining the party when he finds the 2 lands he would like. 2 Guildgates going to be the grab, Azorius and Dimir Guildgate. As I mentioned, we're now at 7 different lands.
Yeah, get used to this.
Time for zombie tokens. And there you see Justin Parnell blazing his way onto the battlefield. And now it's up to Zach Allen to respond. Mentioned a lot about Zach's mirror tech in the form of Yarok and, of course, the Agent of Treachery. Abe Corrigan, looking to do things a little bit differently, has a Kenrith, the Returned King. That's another promo card seen playing standard. That's totally fine. No problem with that. And Fate of Wishes, which is something popularized by Brad Nelson, allows you to go get a key sideboard card and answer things that way. I will note, though, in Abe's sideboard, there's just the Jace Wielder of Mysteries, which is good. That's a great plan for these mirrors. You just eventually deck yourself, win off Jace's static ability. No Unmoored Ego in the sideboard, though, which I think is interesting. Sometimes that can come up in these mirrors.
Yeah, you mentioned the Kenrith. It's an interesting one. Sometimes what these decks look to do is get a Teferi on the board. On the end of the opponent's turn, they'll cast a Wrath of God effect, untap, make a bunch of zombies through their lands, play Kenrith, give them all haste, and just get way ahead that way.
It's one way to go about this matchup. You need a plan for it. You need a plan to be able to overcome the scaling on your opponent's side. Zach's plan last turn was to cast Golos, go get a Field of the Dead. Abe's plan this turn, cast Golos, go get a Field of the Dead. And now the zombies are flowing. 4 zombies over on Abe's side of the battlefield. Still has a land drop for the turn. I think I see a copy of Hydroid Krasis. Maybe a Teferi.
Looks like it.
Looks like one of those Japanese alternate art Teferis in Abe Corrigan's hand.
Yeah, I almost spent some money picking up some of those neat alternate art Planeswalkers.
I think they are good investments, these Planeswalkers. Powerful, powerful cards. Narset, of course, also equally impactful in Eternal formats.
Yeah, I just wanted them to play with.
Sure. So untapped land is going to come down for Corrigan, and Corrigan is going to cast that Teferi. Just going to tick up. 6 zombies on the battlefield now. And he's going to pass the turn back to Zach Allen. Zach takes a draw. Needs to start putting together his engines now. Step 1, Yarrick.
Oh, this is going to be such a mess.
This is going to be an absolute nightmare to keep track of. Step 2, it is a land. 7 different lands now on the battlefield. That means triggers.
2 zombies.
2 zombies. Scry from the Temple of Mystery. Alan going to go ahead and put that on the bottom of the library. This is a pretty good way to outscale your opponent.
So, Brian, I got an email this week from our friends at Star City.
Okay. What did they have to say?
They said, hey, Craig, we'll make a personality token of you if you want us to.
Okay.
And so I emailed them back, and I was like, awesome, I'm going to be an elk.
Okay.
They emailed me back saying, hey, elk is not an option. I don't know why. It's not a big deal.
Shut down. Nice.
Yes, but now the question is, what token should Craig be?
Let's ponder that throughout the day, Craig.
Yeah, we'll revisit this question.
Yeah, I want to think carefully about this. I will peer into your essence, figure out the ideal token for you. Meanwhile, in our match, Abe activating Golos, and that means 3 spells for free. First one was Once Upon a Time, uses that to find a Hydroid Krasis. The second one is Circuitous Route, going to use that to go get 2 lands. That is going to put 4 zombies onto the battlefield.
How ridiculous.
Has an additional land drop remaining in the form of that breeding pool. Should he want it, we'll put an additional 2 zombies onto the battlefield, and things have well and truly gotten out of control in our first match of Standard. Get used to it, folks. Get used to it. Do have our first result from our Modern match. We see Harlan Fear up a game against Gabe Tomajko. Harlan, unsurprisingly, playing Wurza, of course, won our Dallas Open with Wurza.
Yeah, I think the big question when you look at Modern is everyone knows now that Wurza is the problem in the room, right? Mm-hmm. So the question is, they probably have a lot of really good Game 1 matchups, but can they wade through a sea of hate in Games 2 and 3?
Well, that'll be the question for Harlan here. Worth noting, Harlan not really making any updates to the deck with the release of Throne of Eldraine. No Emrys in the list. Does not like the card. Staying static, very close to the list that won Dallas. Watching these Urza decks evolve is going to be interesting throughout the weekend. We're going to see who stayed pat, who moved in on the paradoxical outcome plan, who's looking at Jeskai Ascendancy in conjunction with Urza now. Yep, that's something we're doing. Get used to that, folks.
There's actually a lot of combos with Emery.
Maybe too many.
Maybe too many. Maybe definitely. But we'll see who's exploring more creative ways to break that card.
Yep. Look how Abe still has so many cards in hand.
So many.
How is this a realistic battlefield to routinely reach, by the way? This isn't a rare occurrence.
Yep.
Like this will be happening throughout the weekend.
Like you said, every card just turns into another great resource. It's not like you get flooded out in the mid to late game and you're all frustrated. I drew another land. No, it's always good. Golos just provides infinite cards. All the spells draw tons of cards. It's a problem.
You have hands full of Crasises, able to draw all the cards you'll ever need.
Is it Crasises?
I have no idea.
Crassi?
Crasi. Either one works for me.
Crassy? I don't know.
So Zach Allen now redeploying that Yarrick, which was bounced by Teferi on the last turn. And it looks like that's going to be it for the turn.
Ugh.
Yeah, Abe Corrigan's starting to get pretty far ahead here. Of course, all these decks have catch-up mechanisms.
And I really like it. So the first thing Abe did on his turn,
Plus Teferi.
just plus the fairy. It's not a decision to be made there. There's no thinking involved. So you just do that first, get it out of the way. You won't forget it later when you're mired in all the other decisions you have to make. I like that.
Yeah, there's a lot to think about with these Golos decks. Simplify your processes as much as you can. Good little tip. Speaking of simple, huge Krasis. That's pretty simple. I'll draw a ton of cards. Looks like X is at least 10.
It is. Oh, man.
It is, in fact, 10.
Magic player Madigan Mason. Magic player Madigan Mason. Please make your way back.
Corrigan going to have a wealth of options now. Thinking about attacks, Yarrick makes them tough. Tough to find profitable attacks.
Yeah, I think he has enough zombies where he stays ahead, even if he gives his opponent some life.
Yeah, he's doing the math right now. All those zombies are going to rumble through. Zach's going to make some blocks. Looks like 4 blocks in total.
Yep, take 8, gain 3 back here. Oh, this is another great card.
Fabled Passage, new edition from Throne of Eldraine. Our new fetch land usually functions like a terramorphic expanse, but if it's your 4th land or more, the land will come into play untapped. And here's a Boreal Grazer putting another land onto the battlefield. That means 6 total zombies coming down. 2 from Fabled Passage. Excuse me, 8 total zombies coming down, right?
6, I believe we're at.
We have 2 Field of the Dead.
Yep. Fetch land, gets a land. Arboreal Grazer puts a land into play. That's 3, 2 zombies each, 6. Doesn't matter.
Right,
I mean, it's all just ludicrous.
Arbitrary number of zombies. Yeah. Zach Allen falling to 10. Now is in a position where he's going to have to do something on this turn for sure. Hydroid Krasis sitting there. 10 power and toughness, ready to end this game in a hurry. One of the things about the switch to Sultai, no sweepers in Zach's deck. Find Finality, the only one. Not a pure sweeper, obviously. Won't kill Golos, won't kill Hydroid Krasis.
Yeah, so the white decks get the Realm Cloak Giant and the Wrath of God attached to that. The black decks kind of have to go a different route. This is actually a very interesting spot in this game. Abe is way, way ahead on the board, but Zach just got to untap with his big payoff on the board, right? He's got tons of lands to work with. He's going to get double triggers. So we'll see if this deck can crawl out of this hole doing something pretty ridiculous from here.
One thing I'll note, I think Zach is lacking red mana right now for a Golos activation, and that's a big deal. We're going to start the turn with Once Upon a Time. It's going to get Swamp.
It's possible that the board is just too wide for him to catch up to at this point. He needs to gain some life or steal the Hydroid Krasis, but then he also needs to have enough zombies of his own to block all of the zombies on the opposing side. Not all of them, obviously, but enough to where he won't die.
Here are some zombies. That points to me maybe not having Agent of Treachery in hand, because you would take the Krasis and maybe a Field of the Dead as well. Maybe not, though. Let's see what Zach has. Is there an out available? Zach doing some math. And these games will get very mathy. They will get bogged down. Here is the Agent of Treachery. Okay.
Sure, that Teferi is a big problem.
Step 1, take this Krasis. Step 2, take a zombie token. Maybe Teferi instead. That makes a lot of sense to me.
So, if you take the Krasis, and you leave Teferi on the other side, the opponent's first play is just,
Get my Krasis back.
get my Krasis back.
Yeah.
Recast it, draw a million cards again.
Agent of Treachery stealing your opponent's Teferi is so nice because you can often just bounce your Agent of Treachery back to hand. Here, with the pressure that Zach is under, may not have that option available. But regardless, is going to take the Teferi, is going to take the Hydroid Krasis, and go to minus on the zombie token. Must need to do that to stay alive here.
Sure.
I'm not even going to pretend like I did the math to say that authoritatively.
Yeah, 6 blockers. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 9, 10. It would have been 11 attackers, but there's some lifelink on the other side.
Yeah, too much math, like I said,
Yep,
Greg.
I can't do it.
Leave it to the players. We're back on Abe's turn now. Certainly, Abe's going to see if he can find lethal here. That's step one. If not, he'll continue to just try and push the advantage.
He's got a lot of lands in his hand. Might just be the Golos activation.
It's usually a pretty good place to start. It is Golos time. 3 cards. Finds a Teferi. Doing some counting. It's going to do some bouncing.
Yep.
That is going to be enough to get through lethal.
Yes, bounce your lifelinker, have enough attackers to kill you.
Yeah, and Abe Corrigan is going to take down game 1 against Zach Allen. We do have a result over in our legacy matchup as well, and there you see Drake Sasser up a game against Oliver Tomajko, Jeskai Mentor versus Teamer Delver. Craig, what do you think about our first peek at Throne of Eldraine Standard?
This is a mess.
It is a mess. It's going to be a glorious mess throughout the day. And now we're going to head to the sideboards, see if we can make things maybe a little bit less messy. We'll start over on Zach Allen's side. There you see a sideboard of 3 Assassin's Trophy, 2 Healer of the Glade, 2 Veil of Summer, 2 Legion's End, 2 Oko, Thief of Crowns, 2 Cry of the Carnarium, and 2 Casualties of War. It looks like Zach came ready for this matchup in the sideboard. What are you doing if you're on Zach's side?
Yeah, it really does. I mean, the Assassin's Trophies are great for cleaning up Field of the Dead and potentially Planeswalkers if you can't just attack them cleanly. The Legion's End just clears out zombies if you want to go that route. The Casualty of War is a big answer to Field of the Dead and their biggest threat on the board and a Planeswalker. So I like a lot of these cards. The question is, will he still execute his game plan with all of these cards sided into his deck?
It is a delicate balancing act to know how far to go towards your sideboard plan because you have to keep together your main deck synergies. You have to make sure you're still doing your thing. Meanwhile, over on Abe's side, we see 3 Devout Decree, 3 Agent of Treachery, 2 Veil of Summer, 2 Negate, 2 Assassin's Trophy, 1 Time Wipe, 1 Prison Realm, and 1 Jace, Wielder of Mysteries. We see Abe Corrigan also getting ready to account for the mirror, finding that Assassin's Trophy splash from the Bant Golos deck.
So, yeah, the Agent of Treachery is just great. The Assassin's Trophy we talked about, that's a good card. Negate is a pretty strong card. The Veil of Summer is kind of interesting. I kind of like it out of Abe's deck, where I don't like it nearly as much out of Zach's deck. When you're staring in the face of Teferi, Veil of Summer is a very mediocre card.
I totally agree with you, Craig. And it's a real point of tension when you're playing the typical mirror, because in theory, you can understand why Veil of Summer would be so impactful in this matchup. You want to be able to negate your opponent's Agent of Treachery. You want to be able to stop their Assassin's Trophy.
Yep.
All that stuff matters a ton. But as soon as 1 Teferi comes down, you can just find your entire hand negated if you're way too reactive.
Yep.
But Abe is going to have the option to take a more reactive stance because Zach Allen does not have access to Teferi.
Yep.
One of the reasons why I think Teferi is very hard to walk away from. I understand that Zach has found his own incentives to head towards the Sultai colors and may be able to make that work. I'm not going to pretend like I have any experience with Zach Allen's deck. I think this is his own thing, and I want to see what his plan looks like. But as far as giving up Teferi, this is a really large strike against it. You make your opponent's sideboard cards way better against you.
Sure. Yeah, I can see the appeal of the Sultai deck in a world where it's tons of mirrors. Showing up with something like Risen Reef where you just get value over and over from it as the game goes on.
Right.
Each of these decks doesn't do a very effective job at removing anything from the board. there's not a lot of removal spells running around. So some of the cards, if you can get 2, 3, 4 triggers out of a Risen Reef, it's going to just accumulate such an advantage.
Right. No, absolutely. Well, folks, I promise you, we are not overstating the impact of Throne of Eldraine on all of these formats. It is huge, and as we walk around the room here today, we see player after player leaning hard into these new cards, testing out these new archetypes. If you want to do the same, you certainly are going to want to get in your Throne of Eldraine order today, and you can head over to go.starcitygames.com/ELD. Put together a nice little order for yourself. Get the singles you need, get the boxes you need, get those beautiful play mats. All the good stuff available at StarCityGames.com. Beautiful art in this set.
Yeah, what do we call that art? The adventure alternate art.
You call it whatever you want, Craig. I'm here for you. I got your back.
No, there's an official term for it, right?
Like storybook? Is that what it's called?
The storybook art. Thank you.
I think that's correct.
The storybook foils.
Beautiful.
Absurd.
Yeah, they are absolutely beautiful. I agree with you.
They're just so nice. Opened one at the pre-release, as a common, and I was still just blown away by how good it looked.
Yeah, real problem point for me because I'm going to spend all of my money on them. My wife is not pleased, but what can you do?
When Christmas rolls around this year, she's going to be opening presents, and it's just going to be all storybook foils.
Yep, that's it.
They're for you, honey, I swear.
Big on storybook foils in the Gottlieb household. Big on all foils, really. Well, it looks like our players are ready to go down in our standard match. We can zoom right down to that battlefield. They already have a couple lands.
Oh, they started without us.
How dare they? Okay, we didn't miss too much. Just lands. First play is going to come from Zach Allen. It's going to be Growth Spiral. This card, when I saw this card, I knew it was destined for big things.
Yeah, Growth Spiral is a very good card.
I think in a lot of other metagames, it would be a headliner in and of itself, right? Incredible that you can ramp without giving up card quantity. But there's just so many powerful effects in this format.
Well, I think there was a good bit of a hype around it when it came out, but we're talking about a standard format where there's so many ridiculous things going on.
Right.
That some of them just get lost.
Speaking of ridiculous things, Zach Allen now with 6 lands on the battlefield on turn 3. It's pretty good. Pretty good start from Zach. A lot of times this mirror is defined by just how hard you can go, how fast you can do your thing. And Zach certainly getting ahead as far as that metric goes. Here's a Beanstalk Giant from Abe Corrigan. Going to go ahead and find a basic land, put it onto the battlefield untapped. Important rider on that Beanstalk Giant.
Yeah, we saw game 1, Abe was able to just ramp a little bit more. He got the first Golos on the board. He started making zombies first. And, he's just playing from ahead for the rest of the game from there.
Mm-hmm. Here's a Risen Reef from Zach Allen. That is going to find a swamp.
Ooh, lucky.
Put that onto the battlefield. Zach now plays his 9th land. No Field of the Dead yet, though. All the mana in the world. Or excuse me, that was the 8th land. My mistake. Who can keep track anymore?
I was about to say 8, 9.
So many lands.
40 lands. It's all the same. Yeah, it looks like Zach took a couple mulligans this game. So he's really desperate for a payoff here.
Abe is ready to get to ramping. Going to go ahead and cast Circuitous Route. There you see that Beanstalk Giant is on an adventure presently. When it completes that, it can head to the battlefield.
Ooh. Yeah, Beanstalk Giant, an interesting one. It gets an untapped land. Usually isn't relevant, but it could be. More importantly, it's a giant. So if you get this onto the board and then later use the cast-off side of Realm Cloak Giant, you get to keep your Beanstalk Giant around.
Not bad. Not bad to keep your beater around. I will tell you, I am lower on this card than other people who have been playing the Golos archetype. One thing I find, your games go long, you will run out of basics. And if you play this card in large numbers, you can often leave yourself in a position where your Fabled Passage is blank. I also just think 3 mana ramp, not that exciting. It's just not a spell you would generally be pumped about. And then the 7 mana creature that can be blocked forever by Field of the Dead tokens, also not that excited.
Sure.
Where it gets better is when you play it in conjunction with Kenrith and can give it trample.
Okay, I can see all of that. The other side of that is the turn 1 Arboreal Grazer into turn 2 ramp spell.
That's nice.
Is very tempting.
Yep.
But with so few green sources that come into play untapped, that's more of a pipe dream than a reliable plan.
I think so. I'm comfortable moving my ramp a little bit further up the curve in this deck. But some players really a fan of the Beanstalk Giants. Meanwhile, Zach Allen is a fan of Yarrick. Going to get a trigger off the Risen Reef. As you mentioned, Yarrick is an elemental.
2 triggers.
2 triggers, correct.
Yep, this is the dream.
Yep. So Zach with a lot of mana on his side of the battlefield, but not really the kind of payoffs you're looking for. Risen Reef, Yarrick, fine Magic cards. Not the slam dunks of a giant Krasis or a Golos. Here we do see our first Krasis. It's for 5.
Yeah, but just any elemental here is just so much value.
Absolutely is. Looks like Zach going to consult with the judge briefly before making a play.
I mean, imagine playing another Risen Reef here.
Yeah, that makes sense. That would go off pretty hard.
Yeah, 4 triggers.
Sounds good to me.
That's a lot of cards to look at.
And as you mentioned, with these decks generally not interacting on the battlefield, almost no spot removal in these decks at this point. You either sweep or let the creatures remain.
Oh, I wonder if Zach has a second Yarok.
He does. He drew a second Yarok.
Okay.
And maybe that's what he's asking
So
about.
his rules question is, if I play Yarok, they're both on the board when the Risen Reef
do
triggers.
they both double?
Do they? Yeah. Am I getting 2 triggers, 3 triggers, 4 triggers? What happens here?
Fair question, and I have no idea. We'll have to see how this one gets resolved. A lot of wonky rules interactions early on in this standard as well. Between the adventure cards, these battlefield triggers. It's a good time for folks who love complicated Magic.
Oh, man. My poor brain can hardly handle all the grinding going on.
Us old guys, it's tough on us.
Well, even like circuitous route, you need to get the right lands because you want to be able to activate Golos if you draw it, right?
Sure.
So it's not just like, oh, I'll just take the first 2 gates that I find. You need to find the right ones.
Yep.
So just every turn is a thought process in these weird 5-color infinite mana decks.
Yeah, it can be a slog. Been playing a lot of online tournaments recently, the Fandom Legends series, and I played a bunch of Golos in it. And we recently made the shift from untimed rounds to time rounds. And, feeling the pressure of the rope these days, I'll tell you that.
I was about to say, it gets a little awkward.
It can be. It can be tough.
That's funny.
So it looks like we're still figuring out exactly what's going on with this interaction. See Zach's cards on the table. We'll try and get an update from down on the floor, figure out exactly what the question is, see if our spotter has any info for us. Warza versus Burn, all tied up at a game apiece. Mentor still with the only game decided in that Mentor-Delver matchup.
Yeah, we said that all these decks in Modern are going to have really effective artifact hate in their sideboard, right? Let's take a look real quick. Gabe Tomajko's sideboard here.
4 copies smashed to smithereens. Not bad. Not messing around.
Yeah, it's not too crazy. It doesn't kill multiple artifacts. It still costs 2 mana, so it's not the fastest. But certainly 4 copies is a lot.
Yeah. Doing damage along the way, too. You don't get all the time in the world against these burn decks. Meanwhile, checking in on the Legacy decks, it doesn't look like Oliver Tomajko picked up Oko, so not going to get to see our first Legacy Oko in this matchup. It's coming, though. I'm telling you, it's coming. It looks like players are ready again, and the play is going to be a second Risen Reef.
This is my dream.
So much value. Zach just basically gets to look at his entire library and do whatever he wants with the cards he sees.
Oh,
So looks like we're picking up 3 cards to hand.
another Risen Reef. Oh, gosh.
Casualties of War from Zach Allen.
Yeah, I wonder if he doesn't want to worry about playing that card yet.
Maybe you have some time to sit on that.
Well, it's kind of this two-edged sword, right? Like, you want to get all this value out of your Risen Reefs. Potentially your opponent could just untap and wrath you. But on the flip side, everyone's running around with Veil of Summer. The opponent's tapped out right now. It would be nice to just blow up his things. I'd hate to let the opponent untap and Veil of Summer my Casualties of War later in the game.
That is a blowout for sure. Looks like the play is going to be Circuitous Route. Going to go get 2 Guild Gates. Again, Zach Allen, all the mana in the world available. Still no Field of the Dead. This game would have gotten out of control real quickly.
Oh, yeah.
I wonder if we still have a Risen Reef on this turn. No, just going to pass back to Abe. Abe's going to untap, takes his draw, finds Field of the Dead. And that will be land number 8 for Abe, meaning if he chooses to deploy it, it will be ready. There you see a Kenrith, the Returned King in hand for Abe as well.
Oh, he's going beatdowns.
He says might as well. Cast Kenrith, the Returned King.
Yeah, we got to look up that one. A lot of text on that one.
Yeah, if you're not familiar with this is the Buy a Box promo. Those cards not generally thought of as being players in Standard, but we can erase that perception. This is now another Buy a Box promo, making waves. 5 abilities across 5 colors. All creatures gain trample and haste. +1/+1 counter. And target creature, target player gains 5 life. Target player draws a card. Target creature from a graveyard onto the battlefield under its owner's control. Kenrith using the +1/+1 counter mode there, just putting a counter on Krasis. Not the strongest play possible from the Bant Golos deck. As you mentioned, trample and haste, a big deal on Kenrith, the Return King.
Yeah, for sure.
Well, now it's time for a 3rd copy of Risen Reef, and I don't even know what happens anymore. My small brain will explode. I'm assuming Zach just gets to do whatever he wants. How about a Field of the Dead?
Oh.
That seems good. It's going to go ahead and trigger here. Couple of zombies, 2 because of the Eric. Another land. How about another couple of zombies? Thank you. Let's trigger those Risen Reefs again. Another land. How about another couple of zombies?
Mama.
Why not?
How many more triggers do we have? 1 or 2?
Probably like 12.
12.
Oh, another Field of the Dead. How about some zombies?
Oh, mama. This is so fun.
Zach's like, I just get to keep doing this forever, right? There's no limitations on this. Abe was grasping his cards in a way that I thought he might be packing it
I
in,
thought he
but
might be.
looks like he wants to see a little bit more from Zach. He's going to see it. It's Casualties of War. That's going to take out the Field of the Dead.
And does he want Kenrith or the Krasis?
Looks like it is going to be Hydroid Krasis. Makes sense. Abe not super mana rich right now.
Yep.
This game's spiraling out of control quickly for Abe Corrigan. Just a bunch of lands and a Teferi in hand. Zach says, I guess I'll play a land.
Well, and he has another Risen Reef.
Abe gonna take a draw here. Tapping for Teferi, looks like. Yep, there we go. Gonna go ahead, minus, bounce Kenrith, takes a draw. And we're just going to pick him up.
Oh, thank goodness.
And that's enough. I thought maybe we were going to see a Wrath there, but I think it really didn't matter. I think the writing was on the wall in that particular match. Zach did his thing hard, and now this match has been evened. 1 game apiece. Still, no matches decided across all 3. It shows you how the pace of all these formats has slowed down quite a bit.
Yeah, I'm a little surprised the Burn Wurza matchup hasn't wrapped up yet.
There's so many micro decisions to make on every turn. Every turn takes 10 minutes to play out. Even if you're only playing 4 turns of the match, it can take 20 minutes.
Exactly. It's not that those games go 8 or 10 turns. It's just that there's so many little decisions in there along the way.
Right. Even that game actually didn't span that many turns, despite what the battlefields look like. It was a pretty compact game, It's just there's a million things happening on every turn.
It's funny that we call. I mean, that did go, I don't know, 8 or 10 turns, right?
I think it was less than. I think it was closer to like 6 or 7. It may have felt like 8 or 10, but like with all the ramping going on. Someone review that game. Let us know how many turns it was. I think it was less than you expect.
Sure. But this is just a great example of what we were saying during our intro, just how big Standard has gotten, where players are just going over the top of each other constantly.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, even in the main decks, you're starting to see less and less Wrath of Gods and just clean answers to threats. And I wonder if there's a mono black deck or a mono red deck that like can be tuned enough to sneak in under these other decks.
Yeah, so the most promising form of aggro I've seen are the decks that really look to avoid the chump blocking powers that come with Field of the Dead. So I've seen like green-black aggressive decks relying on Questing Beast, Rankle, Spawn of Mayhem. That seems like a very, very strong way to go ahead and get aggressive. And they can also play Assassin's Trophy, so they have some ability to interact with Field of the Dead. I like those setups quite a bit. Problem is the mana is not fantastic for an aggressive deck.
It's kind of weird that these 5-color decks have much better mana than a 2-color deck.
Right. Your 1-drops are a little bit off as well. Like Pelt Collector is okay-ish.
Yeah, sometimes it's just a wah-wah.
Yeah, Knight of the Ebon Legion doesn't play super well in those setups, even though it's a powerful card, unquestionably. But you're missing the synergies you had of the last Standard when you were able to play a bunch of vampires and get your Sorin stuff going. And Adanto Vanguard made it larger right away. So I think those decks still figuring some things out right now. The Golos decks are the most tuned decks in the format, I would say. They are closer to their final form than everyone else.
Sure. Well, and a lot of what we see out of the Golos innovation is just based around the mirror where you're trying to one-up the other Golos players.
Absolutely, and that makes a lot of sense to me. It's the best deck. It sounds like players are already ready to go. Mulligans have been resolved, both players keeping 7. Another thing I love about these Golos decks, you don't mulligan very often.
No, just so many lands,
28, 29 lands. It's hard to find a non-functional hand. Things are going to start on Abe's side with tap Breeding Pool. Passes over to Zach Allen. Simic Guildgate. Just a Guildgate for Abe here. One thing I'll point out, Abe probably didn't know the exact contents of Zach Allen's deck. Sideboarding was very easy from our point of view. We know exactly what you wanted. Abe didn't have the same luxury. So interesting to know whether or not he changed his sideboarding between games 2 and 3, whether he thinks he has some more information.
Yeah, I think it's easy to assume that there's going to be 2 or 3 or so Assassin's Trophies coming in, but Casualties of War might have been a card he didn't expect.
I think that's fair. How about a free Once Upon a Time?
Turn 3.
From Zach Allen.
Like, he got to wait so long before playing that. It's just so much information.
It's huge. The longer you can wait on your Once Upon a Time, the more information you gain, the more you know, okay, I need this color of mana, okay, I need this threat. So much value from waiting. Here's Risen Reef. Just going to draw a card. That's the bad mode of Risen Reef in this deck. You would love to see a land in most instances.
Yes, you always want to ramp, but if you don't, you still get a free card.
Not so bad. Back on Abe's turn now. Looks like step 1 is going to be Beanstalk Giant. Giant off on an adventure. Swamp going to be the find for Abe.
And like you said, so we've seen this Beanstalk Giant multiple times now, and the other time, it just didn't even get cast. It didn't come back from his adventure because, you know, for that much mana,
you need more.
You're doing so much more powerful stuff.
Just not high on this card, Craig. A lot of people disagree with me. Maybe I'll have to revisit my opinion. I'll be the one proven wrong, but I don't think it earns a slot in the Golos decks right now.
Sure.
I think both, like, it's a bad way to judge an adventure card to say both halves are bad, because obviously adventure cards are the sum of their parts.
Sure.
And both parts can be bad, and you still find a card you're interested in if you have enough synergies. But even with that buff, I just don't think Beanstalk Giant is there in these decks.
Yeah, and this is kind of part of the process of figuring out the format, right?
Of course.
where I understand the allure of being Stalk Giant,
Right.
but you really need to play 10, 20, 30, 40, 100 games, not you personally, but just the card needs to just see that much play to figure out if it is the right card for the deck.
Of course. Of course. So like Zach just played untapped land here and passed the turn back to Abe.
A little awkward for Zach here, not doing a whole lot.
Here's a Golos from Abe. Abe just jamming into Zach's mana. Of course, no actual counter spells in Zach's sideboard. I have like Disdainful Stroke in my Golos sideboards. Pretty happy with that. But it does have the same problem we talked about. If you're playing a Bant Golos Mirror and you have Disdainful Stroke, 1 Teferi negates your entire game plan. So.
Yep.
But Golos does successfully resolve here. Goes and grabs a land. It's Fabled Passage for Abe Corrigan's land drop for the turn. That means 2 zombies able to be produced. When you have your Field of the Dead going, Fabled Passage, the best land in this deck. Looks like the fair version of Once Upon a Time is being cast now by Zach Allen. And that's the thing. That's what really puts Once Upon a Time over the top in these decks. It's a good card in this spot. Like, this is a fine card to be playing.
The fair version still only costs 2. You still play it at instant speed, and you still look at 5 cards, which is a ton of cards.
Yep, and Zach was able to find a Field of the Dead and Agent of Treachery, possibly the 2 best cards he's looking for right now. Happy to pay that full retail cost for Once Upon a Time. 3 Once Upon a Time cast this game for Zach Allen.
Yeah, but he really needs to ramp a little bit more. He can't fall too far behind. Once a bunch of zombies start showing up, some of these cards are going to be negated.
I have a feeling he's going to get a good start towards that plan on this turn. Finds a 5th land, untapped from Fabled Passage. Is it Yarok time? It is, and that means 2 Risen Reef triggers. This is big for Zach. All right, first one's going to put a land onto the battlefield. Second one, also putting a land onto the battlefield.
Yep, big.
Another reason to love Risen Reef in these decks. Zach playing 29 lands, going to hit a large percentage of the time.
29 is a lot of lands.
It is. I've seen decks go up to 30. I was playing 28 for a minute. I actually think 29 is correct now.
Sure.
A second Field of the Dead from Abe Corrigan. That's going to go ahead and put 2 zombies onto the battlefield. Now we're going to crack that Fabled Passage, get 2 more zombies. And we have a play for the turn. It's Agent of Treachery. Take your Yarok and go to work with Golos and zombies.
So we're going to play the Agent of Treachery game where we're just trying to steal things back and forth?
Yeah, because we're going to see the same thing from Zach this turn, but a lot of inertia gained by Abe Corrigan. There is Agent of Treachery. Take back Yarok. We find a Field of the Dead, 2 zombies on the battlefield. This is doing a nice job blunting Abe's aggression. And I think if you let both decks do their thing unfettered, I think Zach's deck wins in most instances.
Yeah, I think that's one of the reasons he showed up with this Soul Tie deck, right? Because it can be a little bit bigger, go over the top of the Bant versions of the deck. That being said, there's so much variance in these types of matchups, right?
Absolutely. Yeah, we saw the wheel spin from Zach Allen with the Risen Reef, hit 2 lands. Abe has an answer to the Yarok, one of the few pieces of spot removal. It's going to be Assassin's Trophy, and that's nice. Still going to make a zombie, though.
Yep.
A little bit of extra upside. But it looks like we will continue the beatdown plan.
And I like this. Abe has another copy of Golos in his hand. So he's saying, hey, do you want to put a bunch of things in front of my Golos, take all that extra damage, and then I've got a Golos to back it up anyway?
Right. It looks like Zach sniffed that out, though.
Oh, and Agent of Treachery just blocked the wrong thing here. Should have blocked a zombie, put it in front of the other Agent of Treachery.
Looks like we are rewinding a little bit as we try and figure these blocks out.
Yeah, I think they got the judge involved just to see if Agent was on Agent or if Agent was indicated to be on a zombie there.
Right. Do have a result from one of our other matches. Harlan Ferrer takes down Gabriel Tomajko 2-1. 4-color Wurza over Burn.
Yeah, that Wurza deck's going to be a problem.
Which version of it, Craig?
All of them.
Have basically 3 distinct versions of Urza here this weekend. There is this 4-color Wurza, popularized by Harlan Ferrer. There is just Paradoxical Outcome Urza. And then there is Ascendancy Urza, which
Emery Ascendancy.
It loops the Jeskai Ascendancy combo. If you don't know how that works, basically Emery can infinitely recur a 0-mana artifact from the graveyard with Jeskai Ascendancy on the battlefield. Get arbitrarily large, get all the rest of your creatures arbitrarily large. Some grade A nonsense, Craig.
Yep.
Grade A.
Fate Stitcher.
Yeah, you can go that route. Most of the decks haven't been doing that I've been seeing, just because like you still have your Urza plans.
Yeah.
You're just not incentivized to go down that road.
You don't
crazy.
need to put that card in your deck.
It's crazy how much overlap there are in the packages now.
And that's another thing. We were talking about the Beanstalk Giant and having to have so many reps in to figure out what the right cards are. I think a lot of it is metagame dependent, but the Wurza decks are going to go the same direction where after 2, 3, 4 events, it'll shake out which versions are just a little bit better than the other ones.
Sounds like they're still figuring out these blocks down in the feature match area.
I think they were making dinner plans, and they just couldn't agree on where they were going to go for dinner.
Well, a lot of options here at King of Prussia.
Lots of zombies.
Yeah, third field coming down for Abe. Accompanied by a fresh Golos, a Golos rebuy, if you will. But the turn now back to Zach Allen. Zach has seen a lot of cards, courtesy of Risen Reef in this game. You have to think some good options available here.
Yeah, I'd like to get an update on the life totals, just confirming that the life totals are where they need to be. I can't keep track of anything here. There's too many lands, too many zombies.
We will confirm that with our table spotter, make sure we have those accurate. There you go. You do see an update. Zach Allen is at 7. Abe at 19.
And Brian, is this what Modern's going to be for us for the next?
Well, this is standard.
Standard.
So
I can't.
You guys, they have already short-circuited Craig. That's it. Round 1, you have blown out Craig. He can't keep track of the formats anymore.
I mean, part of me enjoys this.
Yeah.
It's powerful. It's fun. People are doing ridiculous things. But part of me is just so scared that we're going to get 12-plus months of just these absurd games.
I'll say this. There was a moment at the start of the last format where it looked like Risen Reef decks kind of invalidated everything else because they could snowball really hard. I'm talking like day 1 of the format when you're doing the streamer showcase type stuff and just like seeing what facially looks very strong. The Risen Reef decks looked out of control. As the format matured, we found more options. Is that going to happen here? I honestly don't know, Craig. This is powerful stuff. This is consistent stuff. And there's not much that can outscale this. And when you know the limits of the format, it's hard for there to be dramatic change.
Yep.
But this is day 1. And someone could show up at this tournament with something we just didn't even contemplate and completely blow things up. I will admit we have not found anything that looks like it invalidates these decks thus far. But things can change. And here is Agent of Treachery stealing a Golos back from Zach Allen, and that is going to be enough to force through lethal zombies, and that means Abe Corrigan going to take down the match against Zach Allen, and that means it's going to be Drake Sasser and Oliver Tomajko determining the outcome of this match of real heavy hitters in round 1. We put together some monstrous teams across from each other.
Yeah.
Kick things off.
So just briefly recap that last game. It's funny because I think the most important point in that game was kind of across turns 2 and 3, where Zach wasn't able to actually ramp.
Right.
You know, he played the Risen Reef, didn't find the extra land, and Abe was able to just get a little bit ahead. His Field of Runes came down, started making zombies right away, and even though Zach was doing some ridiculous things in the mid to late game there, Abe was able to just keep sending in an army of zombies over and over again.
Yeah, and I think you bring up a great strategic point, Craig. Zach's deck was basically built to beat this matchup, and you could tell by all the cards included in it. But if your deck does not perform its core functions, it doesn't matter.
Yeah, the early ramp is the most important ramp. It looks like we get a little treat here.
Little legacy action. Didn't think we'd see too much of that, assuming the focus will be on standard today, but we do see our players. Plenty of permanents on the battlefield. Looks like over on Drake Sasser's side, we see a Palace Jailer, a Teferi, a Blood Moon. That means Oliver Tomajko probably not with a lot of options.
Yeah, I was about to say, we jumped to this match, but it might not be much of a match.
It may just be over. I'm going to take a look through Tomajko's list, and there are 0 basics.
Sure. So the only consideration here is Lightning Bolt at this point. When we look at the life totals,
if these life totals are accurate, that means that it could be Oliver Tomajko drawing live to a Lightning Bolt.
He can't protect it with a counterspell because the Teferi's on the board.
Correct.
So it's just kind of, if I draw a Lightning Bolt, I'm going to cast it immediately.
And hope you don't have it. But meanwhile, Palace Jailer on the battlefield for Drake Sasser means drawing multiples per turn. Going to go ahead and reveal double counterspell with Teferi in play. He's just saying, like, I will counter your thing.
Yep.
Drew a third counterspell there, I believe.
And Oliver's saying, I don't care, man.
Yeah, show me.
Play it out.
Show me, beat me.
Play it out.
Yeah, just on beatdowns here is Drake Sasser. Palace Jailer attacking life totals aggressively. His life totals are not correct presently. Tomajko certainly creeping downwards. Second Palace Jailer coming down from Drake. More beats from Palace Jailer. Tomajko's life total creeping ever lower. Oliver Tomajko on the powerful draw discard plan.
Yep.
Super powerful. Now up to 4 damage a turn is Drake Sasser, and I think this one is locked up at this point. He will find a way to win.
Yeah, I can't imagine this game is not all over. When we jump to it, I mean, this is the dream, right? You draw 2 cards a turn with your Palace Jailer.
Yep.
Your opponent literally can only cast red spells for the rest of the game, and they can't even protect anything with Force of Will.
Yep, this is the game state that Sasser was playing for the entire time. Bounces an Astrolabe with Teferi, just drawing more cards. They mostly don't matter at this point. Fistful of counter magic. Tomajko might be looking for a window to Red Elemental Blast Teferi.
Yep, and then his Force of Wills are live.
Right.
I like Sasser saving
That's not bad.
a sword here.
There's a chance this works out for Tomajko. A small chance. We're on turn 1 of turns. So the Red Elemental Blast was attempted. It was met with a counterspell. Here's the Lightning Bolt. Here's another counterspell. And that is going to do it. And that means Drake Sasser takes down Oliver Tomajko. So the team of Sasser, Führer, and Zach Allen takes down the team of Tomajko, and Abe Corrigan.
The law firm of Tomajko Corrigan.
That does sound like a good law firm. You know, I have some background as far as that goes. I wouldn't be pleased going against Tomajko, and Corrigan in court. That sounds like a fearsome group.
Yeah.
But the team of Sasser, Führer, and Allen has taken down the match, and we have now gotten our first taste